So just to kind of reorient myself as well, here, I'll just zoom in here, or try to. There we go. Oops. So what we've got is the main page here. We've got some styles that we can pull in. This is the current value that we're working on adding. And then we've got some items, and those are both going to be state variables. And that means that it persists across, times that it renders this list page. Can you read this, or do I need to increase the font? Is this good?
I can see it.
Okay. So this is the initial value that we're going to use. So initially, we're going to set the value of the input box to be empty. That's this box right here. And then the actual items is going to start off as an empty list. One of the things that we might want to do here with this text component that we used is actually add a label. Actually, one of the things that we can do here is we can just pass along any extra props that we want here. So the way that we can do this is that syntax right there means that whatever object gets passed in here, it has at least a value attribute and an onChange attribute. Any other attributes are going to get collected up into the props. This is kind of like the ** kwargs in Python, except it's for just JavaScript objects. So what I can do there is I can then pass that along here to this component, and this is the syntax to do that. That just passes any props that were passed in here along to this component there. And then for the text component, one of the things that I actually want to do here is add a label, new item, and see how that looks. So there you go. When I get the new item, it jumps up there. So have tech talk, make money. No, that's just numbers. Okay, there we go. So that's our basic one. And so since I for testing this and kind of demoing it, I don't really want to have to continually enter those in. So how about I just say, here, test1 and test2, and we'll set those initial values there. Okay, so now it looks a little bit nicer. So let's see if we can fix this up a little bit more even. So what I'm going to do now is, let's see, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. Actually, let me change this just a little bit. I'm going to change the format here, and I'm going to make these into objects. And so I'll have an ID is 0, and a value is test1. And you'll see the reason for that in just a second. I'm going to have to change a couple of things here. So the main thing is this item right here. I'm going to give it, the key right here is going to be the ID, and then the value is going to be the value there. And that way, so this shouldn't change anything. Well, actually, I will change one thing. I should have made this. Well, it won't change anything on the view, but I should have made that a 1. All right. So the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to delete items from the list, and I need to identify them. I don't want to just identify them by the text in the item. So the next step is I want to change this little UL thing into something a little bit cleaner. And so Material UI has a nice list and list item component. And so I'll, if we go here, and see what that looks like. So these are the sort of things that we can do here. And so what we'd like to do is have something that looks kind of like this, except it would be nicer if there was a trash can over to the right. So that's what we can do for maybe deletion. And maybe we could even put a checkbox at some point over to the left, but we won't worry about that at the moment. It'll just be, we'll just do a delete. So what I do is, most of the time, I actually just look at the example code to see how it's used. And so we've got a list item, we've got a list item icon that we're going to be using. And then if we come down here, really what we want is to find the thing that said it was the avatar with text and icons. So the avatar is on the left-hand side. We don't want that. What we want is the thing on the right-hand side, which is a list item secondary action, a list item text we're going to need, and then the list item itself, and then that's going to be inside a list. All right, so we're going to need, sometimes I like to group these. So here, I will simply say, actually, let me put these on separate lines. Okay, And okay, so list item text, and list item secondary action. All right. So I'm going to use all of that to build some kind of a component here, and that's going to be my a to-do item. So for now, I'll just say it's got. I'll just say it takes an item as its one prop, and we'll do that. And I'll just make this look the way that the old one did. So it's just going to return an li with item dot value here. And we'll start off with that. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to say items.map, and it goes to to-do item. And we still have to have a key here. That's one of the things that React wants to have, is anytime you've got an array of elements that are all the same, look the same, it wants to have a key for each one. So we'll still keep it.id there. And the value is going to be, item, we now changed it. Item is going to be it. And go ahead and do that. I'll leave those both in there, and we should see the, we see the two lists together. So make sure that I've got the right thing, and then I can delete this old one. So now we've got this. So now rather than using a UL here, I'm going to use a list. That'll probably make it look a little bit different. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's got the styling at least. So now I'll come back up here, and rather than doing this, I'm going to return a list item. Actually, since this is going to have lots of components, I'll go ahead and nest it indent it like that. Whoops. And now I've got to remember how they did the list item text. So looks like the list item text has primary and secondary. So what I really want to do here is I want to set primary equals item.value. I don't have any content for that node, so I just do the self-closing syntax right there. And make sure I close out everything. So if I save that, we should see these are now showing up as list items. All right, so that's the actual rendering of it. If we come back over here, you see kind of what that looks like. Now I want to give it a delete button, so a trash can. So the way that they did that here is you had the delete icon there. So I think that's going to come from Material UI icons. If we scroll up there.
Oh, yeah. It's at the bottom.
Yeah, there you go. So I tend to just import that directly because I don't like to have thousands of imports. So I'll just say.
So it's like Material UI just creates all these components for you. You could just import them and plug them in.
Yep. List item secondary action here. And yeah. So there's going to be an icon button, which we probably need to import, but we'll see what that looks like when I forget something. Oh, that's actually got to be self-closing, like that. Okay. So, yep, there we go. Icon button is not defined. So here I can just come up at the top. That's not really listish, so I'm going to put it up here. And it just helps me to scan it. That's the way I organize things. And, oh, yeah, I got to save it. Oh. Was it icons? Right. Did I forget to npm install that? But it is icons. I don't know why it's.
This is icons delete.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so I got it. Okay, so now we've got this delete button. One of the other things I might want to do is kind of restrict the width of this area here. So I'm going to come up and this was all part of the root. We don't want to make this part of the root, but we want to make it part of the, how about the list area? And we'll say, I guess just max width is going to be, I don't know, 800. And then what I want to do down here is actually make this part of the, make a div. Class name is classes list area. I'm going to indent all of that. And then see it. Okay, that's a little bit better. I still don't like the way that that looks. So I'm going to do a little bit of styling here. And I'm going to try to keep in mind the things that I've been trying to do myself. This is not the way that I would normally do it, but it's the way that I'm wanting to start doing it. And that is to edit the styles inside the debugger rather than trying to edit them inside the JavaScript initially. So what I do is find this, I'm looking for, not the root.
That's something that's been challenging for me about React, is that when it renders the page, it adds all kinds of stuff in there. So it's hard to find the actual component to add the styles to.
Yeah, so it's, I try to find it just in the HTML. If you look in the React dev tools, if you look components, there's a ton of extra components that it'll throw in there. Mm-hmm. This, kind of try to follow the highlighting. It is challenging to sometimes find it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off by saying display is flex. Okay, so that's definitely not the only thing I want. Flex direction is going to be a column. So that makes things go top to bottom. And then align items is going to be center. It's not really what I want. But at least it's a start. So let me go ahead and change this here. Display is flex and flex direction. And I've got to change the spelling there so that it, because dashes don't work in JavaScript. And align items is going to be center. And then I'm going to add another list area content. And I'm going to change this and make this, let's see if I can make this a max width of 800. So saving that, everything should still be lined up in the middle. And then...
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Does Material UI have something for different screen sizes? Like I know with Bootstrap, you could do things so that if the screen sizes, it would go to different CSS classes or whatever.
Yes. Whoops.
I've been manually doing it so far.
So that's really what I was hoping to get out of that. Yeah, so if you come up here, I think it's, yeah, hidden will make things visible or invisible based on different breakpoints. And so that's what this is showing you. So it's basically saying it's hidden at or above a given breakpoint. So if you're on a large up, that means if you're on a large screen, which is defined as a certain size, then it will not show whatever's inside that hidden component. That's what I used before. So you can basically have different layouts for different screen sizes.
Couldn't you use like a separate CSS file and do a media query?
That's how the hidden works. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I've used.
Doing it, Dustin? How are you adjusting your? When you say manually, what do you mean, Dustin?
Oh, I would check the screen size and then say like if the width is below this, then use this styling. If it's above this, then use this other styling.
Yeah, so here's going to see these layouts changing. So these are small. These things are hidden on small up, medium up, and large up, and XL up, right? So those 4 components are going to gradually go away as I change the screen size. And so small up should go away. There we go. It's gone. Medium up should go away there. Large up will go away there.
I don't see it.
And XL up goes away there.
I think you're showing something on the screen, but I don't see it.
Oh, did it not?
It's
That's sorry. I guess while I was resizing it. Yeah, Zoom apparently doesn't do a good job on that. So I was resizing this. And so if you go to this page on the hidden resource, then you'll be able to see that. As you kind of move things back and forth, then the breakpoint up or the breakpoint down will hide themselves or display themselves based on that.
Can you show the code for one of those? I
Sure.
wasn't sure how you, is that just a theme?
So it just means this is hidden on extra small and up. So anything that's at the extra small breakpoint or larger will not show this particular paper. Same thing for the small
I guess I
up
was
and the
thinking
medium
more
up.
of you're doing you're doing flex flow stuff over there, where it's like on a wide screen it would be rows, and then on a narrow screen it would change to column, and kind of like for tables and stuff like that.
Yeah, so for something like that, I think you probably would still just need to do 2 different component hierarchies. I don't know of a way to do that in a convenient way. Yeah. Unfortunately. So, okay. Okay, so here's our to-do list. It looks a little bit better. So we've got a maximum width set. We've got the to-do items. Nothing happens when I try to delete them. And if I added something else, it should, oh, it's not actually showing up because I did not fix that. My add item over here needs to be updated. So it was just taking the items there. So really what I need to do is say an ID is items.length, and the value, well, I can just do value like this. That's shorthand for value. If you don't want to say value like that, then you can just say value by itself inside an object. And so if I save that, there we go. So now how do we delete them? That's the next step. So to delete one, what I'm going to have to do is over here on this icon button, I'm going to have an on click. And I'll call that a delete item. And I'll come up here and I'll just say on delete. How about that? That'll be a prop that I pass through. I'll just change this to be on delete. And then here, I'm going to say delete item, and I'll take some ID. And what I want to do, if I've got the ID that I want to delete, then I'm going to say set the items on, and what I want here is actually all of the items except for the one that I have asked to delete. And so I'm going to introduce another library here called Lodash, and it's really useful for doing these kind of filtering types of things. Unfortunately, the documentation's a little crappy for the floating or the functional programming version. But yeah, so these are some of the things that are kind of built into it. It's basically list manipulation and functional programming in JavaScript. So I'm going to import FP from Lodash FP. And so what I want to do here is I actually want to set this to whatever I get by calling remove. So the way that remove is defined here is it takes an array as an input, and then the predicate, which is going to tell you which items to remove. It's a function that you call. I'm getting some echo off of somebody.
Probably me.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah, so we want to remove anything where this function returns true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to since I'm using the FP version, the order of these arguments actually gets reversed. It's a little weird, but that's the way that it does. So here what I want to say is I want to remove the items where it.id is equal to the ID that I pass in. And I want to pass that over the items array. And yeah, so that's the new items. Maybe I should put that in a separate. So let new items equal this right here. Right. One other thing that we've got to do is I've got to pass in that on delete right there. So, and we got to do a little funny business right here. So I'm going to expand this out a little bit so that I have some room to work. And actually put this on its own line because we have to pass in which item. So on delete, we're going to not, it doesn't take any arguments the way that it's written. If you come back up here into the to-do item, on delete just gets called with an event, the click event. So we don't really get to do anything with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little tiny function here, and that little tiny function just calls delete, delete item with it.id. All right, so that's building a tiny little throwaway function. So this is, sometimes we'll call this a closure because it's the function plus the data of whatever it is equal to, where it gets defined. So that, and I've got a mistake because I've got a comma somewhere. I wasn't expecting to see one. Or I was expecting to see a comma, rather. Oh, right, because there's the items, sorry. Hold up. Okay, what am I? I just need another, no? Okay, now I've gotten myself confused with close parens. Okay, so we're mapping that. We get this side, that closes that, that closes that, that closes that. Does that fix it? Yep, fixed it. Okay. So let's see what happens when I click this. Boom, it deleted it. So we can see what's going on here if we, if we want to make this a little bit clearer. Deleting that item, and then there's my new items. So it's just adding some logging information. So it's deleting item number 1, setting the new items to this array. And we can see that show up like that. All right, so made some progress there. One of the other things that I want to do is I want to change this, the way that we add items to the list. I don't really like having to tab over and click on the add button right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little form component. And say on submit is an add item. And I'll still keep the add button there, or yeah, this button right here, but instead of being, calling the add item right there, I'm going to make it a submit button. And one other thing that we're going to do here is the event that gets passed in here, that's going to be the one argument that add item gets. It's going to be the submit event from the form. We want to prevent that from trying to go over and fetch something from the server, because that's the default behavior. So we want to prevent default. All right. So let's see if that broke anything. Now I can use the enter key. So cool, able to do all that. We can, delete things here. It's all nice and fun. Boom, boom, boom. Right. Any questions about, what I've done here, building the to-do item, building this text component? I guess, the layout stuff was a little wonky, but.
Yeah. Do you have a preference for like the structure of the whole app? Like as far as putting components maybe into separate files and importing them in?
Yes. So, I mean, there's not a necessarily hard and fast rule as to how you do this, because you can have multiple components in a file. It's just if you think that you might use a component in two places, you probably want to put it in its own file. That's like one of the things. I also try to separate the pages from the components that are inside them. So anything that's like general page information, I usually want to separate that stuff out. So let's see if I can come back over here. I got my example, and that's going to be I guess that's my app. Let me go ahead and put in a pages here. And that'll be an opportunity to introduce routing as well. So let's see if I can. So that's going to cause problems. And here, actually, where am I? There I am. Okay. So I usually have a router.js and a routes.js. That might be overkill for this one, but we'll go with it for now. And I'm going to actually switch over and grab one from an existing project. So I'm just trying to think of which one's probably the one that is least concerned with security here. All right. So in my router, I'm going to do that and just copy that in. So one of the things, let's see, we're going to use a package called React Router DOM, and that's going to be a way for us to link up what's in the URL with the actual page that we're on. So we're not going to use the API route yet. That's something that we don't need to worry about. And routes and history we'll get from the routes there. And then here I'm going to say import the list page from example pages list page. All right, so delete all that jazz right there. And then here I'm going to make this an r.route, not router. Don't need authorized there. And we'll do a list. I'll also do a home page. And we'll just change this to home page. Okay. So this is, we haven't defined what the paths are yet. We'll look at the paths in just a moment. But this is how we connect up the URL with the actual page that's going to be rendered. So the way that we're going to connect up the way that we're actually going to define those routes is we're going to come in here and we're going to define them in this routes package. And so let me see, going back over to the Alfred routes. I'll just copy the whole thing. And then we'll clean up things. Okay, so we're going to have use location defined. We're going to use Lodash probably. Named URLs is a tool that we're going to use, and that's going to allow us to do things like the URL for that we've done in Flask. You might have seen that in Flask where you can do URL generation. We're going to do it on the front end here. So we've got two routes that we're interested in, the home route or the home page and the list page. one of the things that I want to do is I want to turn this list of routes into a dictionary. And so this is using the fp.transform thing. So it takes some object that it's building up and a particular route, and I'm able to kind of build an object out of it. So I don't know if I like that way of doing things. So let me change this a little bit. I think that transform is a little overkill for this. So let me show you a different Lodash thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pipe, and I want to take my routes, and I'm going to do an fp.map, and I'm going to take the route input, and I'm going to make that a list of 2 items. So it's going to be the route.name and the route object itself, right? And so this is kind of like a pipeline. That's what the fp.pipe does. So this takes a list of objects, and it gives you a list of lists of 2 items. And then this fp.fromPairs turns that into an object. So it takes those 2 item things and it considers them to be keys and values, or key value pairs, and it's going to turn that into an object. And then I want to, I do pipe, and then I put that onto the route list right there. So that's just that's my preferred way of doing things at this point. I've got a use query, which I was using in the other library. We're not going to use that right now. Actually, I'll leave it there. We're not using it at the moment, though. Route.type, we're not using types. Looks like that's even obsolete in the place where I copied this from. The URL for is the important one. If you wanted to do any particular URLs, then you can grab that there. It's a way to generate a URL with a given set of parameters. So we don't have any placeholders here. We don't need that yet. The main thing that we want out of this is the route list to make the routes work. So I will save that, and then I'm going to go into app.js. And rather than importing the list page here, I'm going to import the router from example router.
Can you go back to that real quick?
To what?
The routes, or router, I mean.
Yeah.
No, it was whatever the page was earlier with the FP stuff. Routes, yeah. There's a lot of magic happening in routes with pipe and map. Can you go through that again?
Yeah, so we start off with this list of routes, and we're going to first call map on it. And that's going to take each one of these items as R. It's going to call a function which gives you a list of 2 items with the name and the route. So what we're trying to do is we're going to try to build a list of pairs where the first item is the key that we want to use in the dictionary, and the second item is the value. And we're doing this because we don't have dictionary comprehensions in JavaScript yet. So so I take the route list, build a list of key value pairs, and then there's this from pairs, which will build an object out of a list of key value pairs. So the pipe will basically pipeline whatever argument that you have here through all these functions. So it's like a Unix pipeline. If you want, you can use fp.compose and reverse the order of things, and it's just function composition. I think that that's a lot less intuitive. But if you wanted to kind of not use pipe here, we could say let routes equals not routers, fp.map r to, well, actually, let's do this, make this very explicit.
Can you do it with just JavaScript?
Yep. Well, just without FP at all.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the from pairs, but I guess the plain JavaScript way of doing this would be let routes equals route list.map of function r, return r name and r. So that would be the way to do this in plain JavaScript.
Okay.
Oops, that was not what I was thinking it would do. There we go. So the way that we could do this inside, with Lodash is just the fp.map. And it's probably overkill to use Lodash here. I just got used to using Lodash for everything that I can use Lodash for. So, and then here we say routes is equal to fp.from pairs of routes. So these two right here, these two calls right there are equivalent to this pipe right here.
And so what does from pairs look like? It gives you...
Oh, like if I wanted to define from pairs, it would be something like...
I'm just wondering what it gives you.
Oh, it gives you an object.
An object
So,
like the route list? Name and path?
actually, that's what it builds me. So I will have at the end of this something that looks like home.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
So why wouldn't you just make the route list in that format?
I don't remember exactly. I mean, maybe because it's being redundant here.
It was like param.
I don't remember exactly why I did it in this way.
Okay. Like when there are like IDs and stuff in the path, does that make things weird?
I am not sure. So yeah, what Dustin's talking about is you could have something like that where there's a list ID placeholder, so you can manage multiple lists. And in that case, our URL4 down here, we'd have to pass an object that had a list ID in it as one of its attributes, and it could generate that list. I don't, looking at this, I'm not seeing that we do a whole lot with the route list. So it might have just been a way that I did it a long time ago and I had a reason to do it, and I just kept copying and pasting from then on. It's happened before. But yeah, really at this point in our application that we're building here, all we really need is the route list itself, I think. So if you look at the router down here, well, actually, we don't even need the route list. So let's see if we can do the. Why don't we simplify this and yeah. We'll just go with routes. All right.
You need to close your object.
Oh, right. Not a list. Okay. So we have an example router. That's a problem in app.js. Right. Okay, so there's a different problem. That is that there's no admin page. And that's probably because I just didn't save this, maybe? Okay. Oh, it's because I...
Copy.
Yeah. There you go. Now I'll complain about the home page or no, the list. Oh, right. The other thing is pages, I'll usually go ahead and make this an export default. Okay, so no routes in the router because I didn't call it /routes. Okay, and now I have no home page, so that's great. Actually, here, yeah. Let me do a couple of things here. One is I want to Actually, I'll put this as part of my app here. Yeah. Whoops. One, not a base page.s, JS. So what I want to do is take some of the things on the list page and refactor them so that my pages, since I've got 2 pages now, they'll be simpler to do. So actually, let me start off not by doing that, but let me start off by just copying or paring down a home page and seeing what I really need as part of the home page. So we'll leave all these declarations here. So okay, so the home page is going to continue to have the root declarations. That's fine. It doesn't need to know about lists. Get rid of that junk. Doesn't need a text component. Doesn't need a to-do item. Doesn't need, or it does need some kind of a page here. Right? So title should probably be passed. Well, we'll use title. Call this home. How about that? Don't need any of that state jazz. We do need an app bar. And we need to have some place to put, well, actually, I'll put an H1 here. Okay, and we have no React router DOM here, so I'm going to go ahead and npm install React router DOM, and also I know that we had named URLs. There's another dependency that we needed to add there. Okay. Nope, looks like I got to restart the npm. Okay, npm start. Don't need that. We'll refresh it over here. So this is going to become the basis of our base page. So can't resolve routes. Oh, I know. In the router. You can do that /routes or example routes. Either one of those should work. Okay, and routes. Needs to have a close quote there. Okay. So we're not using use location here, so we might as well get rid of it. Whoops. Let's clean this up and make this have fewer errors or warnings here. We're no longer using FP there. It helps to find things that are weird. Just to remove those warnings, that makes it easier to find actual problems. So refresh that. So homepage doesn't need to know about use state. Doesn't need to know about FP. Doesn't need to know about button text field or icon button. Doesn't need to know about the list stuff. Does need to know about make styles, so we'll leave that there. Doesn't need to know about delete. And then in app.js, we don't need the logo. We're not using that anywhere. So we'll drop that. And we have a beautiful clean compile, which just makes my heart sing right here. Anyway, so we've got, we got a home page now. If I come in and manually change that to list, we have a list page. So the routing works. Right? So we got now a two-page SPA, two-page single-page app. But what we don't have is any kind of routing. So we'll add, or sorry, any kind of navigation is what I'm trying to say. So we'll maybe look at that next if we've got time. But one of the things I did want to do is make sure that we make these a little bit simpler as part of this refactoring. So I'm going to start with the base page here. Copy that over in, or sorry, home page, and copy that over into a base page. what I want to do here is make this into kind of what's the template of an actual page, and how can we parameterize this as much as possible. So the one thing that we'll probably want to do is have, or the very least, we need to have the title of the page, and we need to have any children. So what children are is if you're defining a React component and that React component encloses other components, like here we've got the div has these two other components, those would be the children of the div. So what we're going to do is we're going to write this base page so that it can kind of give that boilerplate around everything else. So title is no longer there. Got an app bar there, and then here we've got the children. Okay, so that's how we'll change that and make that the base page. That's not actually being used anywhere yet, so we're going to come back in here in home page, and we'll see if we can use that. So I'm going to say import base page from example pages. We're not going to need this. We're not going to need this. And so really what I want to do is I want to say, I'll go ahead and put this inside there. Sorry, this should be a default import. Should I just do title? Yeah, I'll do title equals title. There we go. And that didn't work. Oh, right, example pages. Okay. So we go to example pages base page. We'll also change the list page to do the same thing. Actually, let me come back up here. Base page down there. So here we're going to return base page title equals the list page. Do that right there. And we'll just go ahead and leave the rest of this alone. And okay, so it's the list page to do. So we've got an extra app bar there. We don't need that app bar because it's being provided by the base page. All right, so now I mean, that's not much improvement here, but it's at least something. So one of the things that I'll probably want to do here now is create the make this whole thing a to-do list. We'll copy all of our components into the to-do list here. And the goal is I want to say to-do list, and it's going to have items. How about on add and on delete? Right, and we're going to copy all of this jazz and move that over into my to-do list. So we actually just copy everything here. And I'll pare it down to what we need it to have. Right? So we'll save that. And then clean this up a bit. We're going to make this an add item here. We no longer want this to be an event here, but we want this to actually have, we'll just have it be a value right there. Right? So it's some value that we're going to be, actually, wait a minute. Yeah. And we're not going to manage this here anymore. We're just going to manage the items. Not using styles. Okay. So our list page is going to have an error because we don't have a to-do list defined. when I save it. We don't need the ev.prevent default. Okay, cool. Don't need app bar. Okay, what we do need is we need to have a list, or sorry, to-do list. We certainly won't need that stuff. Actually, I don't think we need anything there. We do need the FP. Where's FP being used? Right there in remove. Okay. Example components, to-do list. I don't know why it's having trouble resolving that. Okay, well. So to-do list is no longer responsible for adding and deleting items. So I'll do this as a handle submit. What it will have is items on delete, on add as its props. So what I'm going to do here is say on add. Is that right? And for delete item, we actually just want to, we don't even want to do anything special there. We're just going to delete this. Actually, looking at this and thinking we don't even need that. Oh, sorry, this, yeah, this is the to-do list. It's no longer a page. We'll get rid of that. Now, I'm not sure why it's having trouble resolving it, so I'm going to restart there. Sometimes the reloader doesn't pick up new files very well. And it's still having trouble.
Can't resolve to-do list. Doesn't really tell you a whole lot.
Let's see.
Is components supposed to be in example?
Oh, that's the issue.
Example pages.
Yeah, it should just be in components.
Yeah, component. So you're in, yeah, you got to go up a couple directories.
Yeah, so if you just, components is the root there, should be able to find it there. So delete item and add item are not defined inside my to-do list. So let's see.
Yeah, you took out the delete and add.
Yeah, so that's the to-do item. Just needs to pass that along, I think. And then the add, sorry, this is a handle submit. at this point.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, we got a nice little bug. Oh, hey, this is your favorite error, Dustin. Yeah, so let's see what got into this. So
Big nasty one right there.
yeah, it's the primary is being well, so it's when we added the item, and what this means is that somewhere it was expecting something to be either text or HTML, came out as being a JavaScript object. That's what this error means. So when we did our add, so on add right here, let's see how that's actually being handled inside the list page. Sorry, that's let's try that way. Okay. So adding an item was expecting just a string right there. You see that it's expecting a string, it's building the object for us. And so we were passing an object in there. And so it was trying to make a list item where the text was equal to an object, and that doesn't work. So to fix that, we come back up here, and instead of doing this, we just say on add value, right? Because that's really what add item takes, is a single value. And just delete works, sweet. And then to-do list, this is in my my components. I don't need FP, I don't need the base page, and I don't need the app bar. In the actual page, I don't need make styles anymore. Wait. Oh, sorry, that's home page. Because the styles are all part of the base page. And another thing that I can do, see if I go back to my home page, this welcome to home is actually not styled very well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come in and say that an H1 takes on theme topography H1. Save that. Well, that was disappointing that was all that it did. Let me see. No, that was an H1 base page. Let's see. Whoops, did I do that in the wrong place? I did. That's not where I want to do that. I want to do it in base page. Because that's where I'm going to put all my global styles. Actually,
here. When using the material UI, do you have to use make styles, or can you use a separate CSS?
I mean, you can use a separate CSS. I think that this is an easier way to deal with it, because you can have all of the styles that are appropriate to that particular component kind of encapsulated right there. That's been convenient for me, at least. One other little thing that I wanted to do, I know that we're going over a little bit, I wanted to add a navigation to this so that at least we can get back and forth between our pages. So let me do that real quick here. I'm going to make this a, it's called a nav drawer. And I'll jump back over here. That's not what I wanted. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to integrate this into our app bar. So I need to have a drawer and a list. So we always have to have React. We're not going to worry about the API or any of that stuff there. What I want to just do is, oh wait, I do want to see what those, sorry. Let me just grab one of these list items so I've got a picture of what it looks like. Okay, so we want this to be a link, this URL for, and we'll do this as a home and list. And let's see, material icons. Do we have a home? Yep, okay. Well, list. Do we have something like a list? Yep. Let's just try list and see if that works. And actually, yeah, let's do. I think that this is the syntax for this. I just want to have the I prefix because I am using the word list here in other ways. I don't want to have a conflict with that. Okay, so that's the drawer there. In our app bar, I think it's the app bar. Actually, I'm not remembering whether it's the app bar or not. It is not in the app bar. It is in the base page. Yeah, got the nav drawer and the app bar. Okay. Yeah, and we don't need any of this stuff. And one of the things that we do need here is we need to be able to have the app bar be either closed or open. And just do a little throwaway function here to say set nav open to false. And did I put the nav drawer in the wrong place? Nope. I just need to, yeah, I guess all my components I'm not doing as default exports. So let me do that there. Or is that true? My to-do list is default export. So maybe I should make all of these default exports instead. I'm just trying, yeah, it's inconsistent as to whether I use default or not. So let me make these all one default component from these things. Okay. Oh, here it's hey, we got progress.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and drop off. So that you
Okay.
record.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be finished up real quick, but I know you got a meeting to get ready for, so, and lunch probably.
Yes.
Oh, this isn't base page. All right, it should be nav open. Okay, so almost there. The only thing that we haven't been able to do is open the nav bar right there, and that is the last thing to do, which is in our app bar. So this icon button right here, what we want to do is whenever we say on click, it's going to set nav open to be not nav open. It's just going to be toggling it, right? So I want to make sure that we've got, actually, do we have props anywhere? Are we doing any props? We are. Okay, so we need title. I'm changing this a little bit to take title, nav open, set nav open. And rather than being props.title now, we just say title. And we've got to actually send in nav open.
Boom.
And it took a little bit more than an hour, but we've got a multi-page app with routing, a little bit of navigation, cleaned up the display of the list there. So some progress. I think maybe next week we could look at having multiple to-do lists, which are managed on multiple pages. So maybe there's a, we have a list of lists and it shows you the titles of all the lists, and then you can go through those pages, and then gives me an opportunity to bring up Redux as a more complicated way to handle state after that.
Okay.
So anyway, any questions about, I know kind of the end, I started going a little bit faster. Any questions about what we did today?
Just going back to the structure. So we're I guess you're pretty flexible on how we structure a app, just as long as it makes sense.
Yeah, I like to have, I'm not, let's see. I don't have strong opinions at this point. I might eventually get strong opinions about it, but I'm not nearly as experienced in JavaScript as I am in Python. So these are just some of the things that I've seen and seem to be working pretty well. So, having the router and the routes makes a lot of sense to me. Putting the individual components in there so that our pages get pretty simple, that's a nice feature. So the pages are really, there's not a lot to them anymore, right? So an individual page does not do a whole heck of a lot. The components, this might even.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say this could even maybe be broken up a bit more. Yeah.
As I was studying React, I seen two extremes. Like one, they break it up only when they need to, and then I've seen from somewhere else, like just about every separate component was broken up into a different file, and a lot of it had its own CSS, which depending on the application, I guess made sense. But either way, there wasn't really a hard and fast rule, just if it was going to be reusable. you would probably want to put it in its own file.
Yeah, definitely. If you're going to reuse a component multiple times, I don't like having lots of things exported from a file. Sometimes I allow that. I do that. I do have multiple things that are exported from a single file. That would be where they're very tightly related, like a context provider and a hook that uses it. So, the use state and use styles, these are hooks. These are actually implemented by things called providers, context providers, or some of them are. So if I'm going to have a hook and a related provider, sometimes those will be both exported from the same file. Or if there's a bunch of related hooks, a bunch of related functions, then I might export all of those individually. But I guess keeping it to one export per file is, having a single export makes it kind of clean. And then maybe if you wanted to group them together, you could put them into a directory like this with a Material UI core. Is kind of the top level package, but you could have also imported any of these things from, I could say import button from a Material UI core button, right? So that's another way that you could have imported that same button. This is actually all of these files are imported in Material UI core index.js, right? So that's where they're actually located, but they're imported from other sub packages. We don't have enough complex components, I think, to do that quite yet. But yeah, anyway, that's my, okay. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was more referring to multiple imports, like just about everything I've seen, they do one export, but like they'll have, like the layout would be its own component, which is composed of navigation items, which is composed of navigation item, and they go down the list. And so navigation item would export, and navigation items will import that back in, and the layout will import the navigation items, which has the other items nested in it, and just kind of go up the tree.
Yeah, if you've got, if you're looking at something like navigation items being just a list of navigation item components, it seems like those belong in the same file to me. That's kind of just my, I guess, aesthetic about it. It seems easier to keep it related. But if you find that you're going to be switching back and forth a lot between two things, putting them in separate files might make more sense. But like if I wanted to make navigation item be an item here, I could, I can do that here. I can say a nav item, and it's going to take where its icon or whatever its component is going to be. It's going to take an icon, a text, and a link, right? Let's call it an href instead, right? So here, I'll just return list item, list, actually, yeah. So that's going to be its own thing. Okay, I'm trying to get my keystrokes better, but it's not working too well. And maybe even make this primary and secondary. Like that, and then have a closed list item. And instead of it being text, primary, secondary. And if you ever name a property here that's not included in that object, it just takes on the value undefined. Right, so we don't have to worry about things that aren't provided there. And then here we're going to say it's a button, and the component is an r.link, and the two is going to be the href. Okay, so now I can clean this up, and I can say nav item icon is equal to i.home, and primary is home, and href is URL for home. So if it makes it clearer like that, like if it's expressing what you're doing, you can do that. But I don't think that there's a big value in having this nav item be in its own file. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the purpose of that particular tutorial I was looking at, it was going to have multiple pages, and they wanted to import those easily and dynamically. So that was like the items themselves would change. So I think that was part of the reason.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, I guess. But I think that this is probably a reasonable way to break it down. Keep it easy for you. We want to optimize it for readability, right? So if it's easy to understand what's going on based on the way that it's structured, and you don't have to, try to limit how much context is required to understand what's going on. That's kind of just a general programming technique. So if you need to have 6 files open to understand what's going on, then you probably have a badly organized project. But if you can kind of restrict it to just the 40 lines on screen, and you've got a good idea, or even if it's the 40 line, actually in this case it's 10 lines. I think that even if you didn't know how nav item was implemented, it's pretty clear what's going on here, right? Yeah. So maybe calling this primary text would be nice, but it's not that important, I don't think. And then one other thing that I probably would do, if I look at my app bar down here, is rather than this being nav open and set nav open, it might be nice to just make this be a on click, something like that. And what we'll do here is we'll just make this an on click. And then in the base page, we're going to change this and make this an on click. And what that allows us to do is reduce the number of props that we're sending, and that's generally a good thing. The fewer props you have to send down, the easier it is to understand it, in my experience. So what we'll do here is we'll just have this, and it just says set nav open to be not nav open. And I think that'll still made a mistake, because I need just a typo. And hopefully that will, boom, yep. So that opens it up. Whenever you click on that, pulls that in, and yeah. I guess that's about it. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? This still useful to see kind of a practical, semi-practical example of building something up from pieces?
Yes, for me, I think so.
Cool. Well, if any questions do come up, please feel free to ask them. And what's this error? That might just be a problem in Material UI, because I don't know that I do anything with the transitions explicitly.
I actually like seeing the errors most of all, because when I get them, then I don't feel so bad, and I can see how you get through them.
Yeah. So it's yeah, that can be helpful, definitely. So I thought we could take this, starting with this, we'll keep on going. We'll maybe do multiple lists, then we could put a backend on it, then we can do authorization and things like that. We could add a database. We could put it on AWS. And at the end, we'll have our own clone of Wunderlist, which is which will not be quite as nice as. Oh, well, there you go. I guess it won't be exactly a. A copy, because Wunderlist is gone. But anyway. All right. Well, this will be available online, and we'll do it again next week. And
Sweet.
We'll talk to you all later. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.